even when consulted. A wife put in that position couldn't possibly have the leeway to try and stay attractive. Even Walter must understand that much. He's just squeezing it out as a last resort, and he knows it. But I do want a divorce. Walter's face brightened with glee. There are conditions, though. What? Out with it. I lay out several conditions. First, pay compensation for the divorce trial. I haven't done anything that would require paying compensation. This time, I take out a folder and thrust it in front of Walter. This is... Inside are numerous photos of Walter being intimate with a certain woman. Yes, Walter was cheating. Even before we started living with his parents. You suggested living together so you could dump caring for Taylor on me and meet up with this woman in the meantime, right? How did you? Before we started living together, I got a bit suspicious and looked into it. Walter hated his own father. So when he suddenly said he wanted to live together and have me care for him, I thought it was strange. When I investigated, this was the result that came out. The woman was Walter's subordinate. I don't know how incompetent he thinks I am, but the evidence piled up quickly. And I made sure to properly save it. I thought maybe if he saw me living together and caring for Taylor, he'd reflect and have a change of heart. So I decided to pretend I didn't see it, just once. But you didn't change. No, I should say you changed for the worse. Walter silently looks down. So I'm demanding that compensation. From you, and from that woman. This was the first condition. Shoving cohabitation and caregiving on me just so you could cheat. I think it'll be quite a hefty sum, but please accept it. Walter remains silent. As for child support, I don't need it. What, really? Yes, we'll call it even. Walter tilts his head, unable to understand my words. Let's take one child each. Cody for you, Megan for me. That's not going to work. If you don't like it, I won't divorce you. Walter fell into a grumbling silence. He probably wants to remarry his mistress as soon as he divorces me. What will you do? Walter thought for a while, but eventually said he'd accept. Maybe he's planning to send Cody to some boarding school. In any case, there are plenty of ways to get rid of him. I feel bad for Cody, but I've completely lost any affection I had for my own son. Walter's enraged face just now looked exactly like Taylor. I have no confidence I can continue living with Cody, who resembles both Taylor and Walter. You went through a rebellious phase too, didn't you? I think you'll understand Cody better, I said with a grin. We decide on a few other conditions as well. Division of assets, bearing the moving costs, consolation money for having cared for Taylor. Adding all that on top of the rest, it came to quite a sum, but fortunately Walter is currently an elite with a high salary. He readily accepted. Well then, once we notarize these conditions, I'll submit the divorce papers. Walter looked thoroughly relieved. After drawing up the notarized document and having the promised sum transferred in a lump payment, I submitted the divorce papers. With this, we're strangers. Feel free to remarry or do whatever you like. However, I will be living here until I find a new home. This was also part of the agreement. Get out as soon as possible. It's unnatural for a stranger to keep living in the same house. Walter says this with a clearly displeased look. He probably wants to call his mistress to this house as soon as possible. Come to think of it, I haven't received the compensation from your partner yet. I think I'll consider until I receive it. What? That's not what we agreed on. What agreement? Your compensation and your partner's compensation are separate matters, aren't they? The notarized document doesn't mention a single thing about the situation with his partner. I can't feel at ease until I receive that. What a greedy woman! Your partner's the greedy one. stealing someone else's husband. Walter has no rebuttal. Anyway, this is my house. Now that we're strangers, please leave as soon as you can. Walter says this with a tragic look. About that, though, I don't think this house is yours. What do you mean? Rather than Walter's bewildered face, I give Susan a light nod. This is my house. What's that supposed to mean? This house is in my name, so it's not yours. Walter looks like he can't comprehend what Susan is saying. This house originally belonged to Susan, not Taylor. So it's not yours. He doesn't seem convinced by my explanation either. Well, of course. I explain the circumstances I knew to Walter. Taylor originally married into the Carter family, and all the Carter family assets belonged to Susan. What did you say? Taylor was that kind of man, right? So having been a live-in son-in-law was too uncool for him, so it seems he absolutely didn't want you to know. Walter visibly deflated. But then, as Mom's house, I'm the heir. It'll be mine eventually, right? About that, I've actually been adopted by Susan. What the hell is that about? When Taylor got sick and the topic of living with his parents came up, Susan and I had a long, in-depth talk, just the two of us. Since we talked about it, of course Susan knows about Walter's cheating, too. I'm an only child, so to inherit the Carter family, we had Taylor marry in. That's why he put on even more airs and got so full of himself. Looking only at the current situation, it's hard to believe, but apparently Susan and Taylor had a passionate love marriage. On top of the difference in family status, with Susan being an only daughter, Taylor gave in and took the Carter name. Taylor's attitude seems to have been a show of affection toward Susan, and conversely, a way of inwardly putting himself down as a live-in son-in-law. That's probably why Susan was able to treat Taylor kindly until the very end, despite his overbearing ways. I think it's a bit of a warped relationship, but I can't help feeling a little envious of Susan for being able to maintain her love for Taylor to that extent. But my parents, your grandparents, passed away saying they absolutely wouldn't adopt him. So Taylor had no right to inherit our assets. Then why did Mom adopt Ashley? I told her about the whole situation, and on top of that, I explained that Taylor would probably be hard on her. And there was one more thing I knew. Susan said meaningfully. That's right. Even back then, we already knew you were cheating. Susan and I thoroughly discussed all sorts of things, and based on that, we decided to pretend it never happened if Walter had a change of heart, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. Ashley has really taken good care of him, and it's also an apology for Walter's treatment. I was happy she looked up to me like a real mother. Is it selfish of me to want her to stay with me forever? When Susan said that, I decided to accept the offer of adoption. So you're the one who needs to leave. You have no right to live in this house. Yes, I've decided I want to live with Ashley. I don't want to see the face of whoever you remarry. Also, my will states that all my assets go to Ashley. Mom, how could you? Walter is unable to believe Susan's words. Of course, there's a legal portion he's entitled to, but the inheritance Walter will be able to receive will be a mere pittance. That's right, get out and take Cody with you. You're abandoning Cody even though you're his mother? The notarized document says we each take one child, right? And didn't you say you understand Cody well? It's only natural for people who can understand each other to live together. Walter had nothing more he could say. A few days later, Walter and Cody left our home. I've heard where they're going, just in case. A house Walter rented. Even if Walter has custody, Cody is still my child. If anything happens, I can't claim to be completely uninvolved. I'll gladly leave this house. Living carefree as bachelors will be way better. Dad's an elite who earns a lot, unlike living in poverty with some part-time old lady. Cody doesn't know that Walter is remarrying his mistress, that he's taken on a mountain of debt from this situation, and that his infidelity was exposed at work, leading to a demotion, pay cut, and imminent transfer. Take care. Let me know if anything happens. I'm never planning to see you again. Don't come crying to Dad even if you're in trouble. Women are so stupid. I don't know what Cody will think when he learns the truth. As a mother, I do pity Cody, but with his personality so warped and trapped in misogyny, there's nothing I can do as his mother. I don't know if Walter can do anything about it as his father, but I have no choice but to leave it to him. After the divorce was finalized, I changed my job from part-time to full-time. I was originally a pharmacist. I chose that job because I wanted to do work that helps people. After giving birth, I returned to a 4-hour part-time position, but the pharmacy attached to the hospital where I work had told me I could return to my original full-time position whenever I wanted. So there's absolutely no issue in terms of income. I should be able to enroll Megan in the school she wants and support her in pursuing the path she hopes for. Walter renovated the house to make it as comfortable as possible, thinking of his own old age too. Thanks to that, we can also live comfortably. Susan is forward-looking, cherishing Taylor's portrait while trying to find her own enjoyment now. I can't fathom what was so great about that overbearing Taylor, but people's feelings are truly mysterious. Megan is also living leisurely now that Cody's verbal abuse is gone. Come to think of it, I got a call from Cody the other day. You're probably in trouble without a man around, so I guess I can come back if you want. It's probably because Walter's transfer was decided and they have to move to the countryside. It seems he's already treating Walter's new wife the same way he treated us, and their marriage is already in crisis. I've also gotten a tearful, pleading call from Walter to somehow help him. Of course, I politely declined. I appreciate the sentiment, but we're fine for now. Cody, please think about your own life. By then. With that, I hung up. It might be cold of me as a mother, but remembering Cody's face back then, hurling the same abusive words with the same look as Taylor. I can't live with him anymore. Strangely, even Susan, who could forgive what Taylor did to her, couldn't tolerate what Cody was doing. From now on, we, 3 women, are going to live each day carefree. Maybe it's a reward for those 2 years of caring for Taylor. Come to think of it, it's just a few years out of a whole lifetime. Forgetting about the storm that's past, I'd like to spend my life like a calm, windless sea. Who are you? Let's fire you. Eloise, the president's daughter, fired me without knowing that I was responsible for 90% of the company's sales. This company is done for. I left the company and decided to join a rival company that reached out to me. When Nate, the president, found out, he turned pale. He tried to explain the situation, but it was too late. The president was furious with his daughter, and after Eloise's rash actions. I'm Marjorie, 43 years old. I'm an employee at a real estate company. I've been working hard since joining this company. Before I found this company, I had been jumping from job to job, but none of them felt quite right. I was either stuck with menial tasks because I'm a woman, or when I joined a company to escape that, I was overwhelmed with overtime and couldn't have a life of my own. But since coming to this company, I've been able to live the life I want. It's all thanks to Nate, the CEO of this company, who puts us employees first. I'm truly glad I was able to join this company. Feeling a sense of gratitude, I took the initiative to work on various projects for the company. Nate recognized my achievements and even started teaching me the role of president, saying he wants to eventually leave the company to me. I was throwing myself into this job more and more to make sure I wouldn't let it fail on my watch. However, a change came to that life. That change was brought about by Eloise, the president's daughter. Her appearance would slightly alter my life here. I met Eloise when Nate was away on a long-distance trip. I was put in charge as acting president and was determined to support the company well while Nate was gone. That morning, I arrived at the company and was about to greet everyone to let them know I had become acting president, but Eloise had already made a move one step ahead of me. While my dad is away, I've become the acting president of this company. Everyone, work hard. An email with that message was sent to everyone's computer in the company. I saw it in the vice president's office, where I usually spend my time. Shocked, wondering what was going on, Eloise barged into the room without even knocking. "Hey, who are you? Why are you squatting in the vice president's office without permission?" I was even more surprised and insisted that this was my workroom. Eloise heard that and raised her eyebrows in displeasure. "Huh? Why are you, a non-relative, the vice president? Are you just calling yourself that on your own? No way! I could never do that! Shut up! Just get out of here! While my dad's gone, I'm using this room to work. What?" I was shocked and dumbfounded. When I asked if she had been appointed by Nate, Eloise puffed out her chest and said yes. I was even more surprised and wondered what Nate was thinking. But if Nate said so, I had no choice but to obey. With that in mind, I was about to leave the room with all my work tools when Eloise stopped me as I put my hand on the door and ordered me to go buy her a drink. "I'm busy, and starting today, you're my errand runner. Come immediately when I call for you." "But I'm busy too, you know? You're hired by my dad, right? That means you're below me. Do as I say." I was furious with Eloise's outrageous remarks, but not wanting to get involved in any more trouble, I did as she said for now and bought her a drink. Eloise smiled with satisfaction. Wondering what kind of work she was going to do, I casually glanced back as I was leaving the room and saw her starting to immerse herself in makeup and nail care without doing any work. On top of that, she even brought in fashion magazines, and the spacious desk I usually used was cluttered in an instant. Suppressing the urge to sigh, I headed to the president's office for the time being. I let the president know I wanted to use the president's office and got to work as usual. In the afternoon, I headed to the vice president's office to get some documents. I knocked several times but got no response. As I called out and opened the door, I found Eloise sprawled out asleep on the guest sofa. Surprised, I hurried over and woke her up, asking what in the world she was doing. Eloise looked at me and ordered me to go buy her lunch. "You should at least buy and bring me lunch before I have to order you to." Eloise said that, explaining that she fell asleep because she was hungry since I didn't bring her lunch even after noon had passed. I tried telling her to go buy her own lunch, but Eloise wouldn't listen. In the end, she was being so stubborn that I reluctantly went to the convenience store to get her food. When I handed it to her, Eloise yelled at me to obey her from the start without fighting back. "Why don't you listen to what I say? I'm going to be the next president, so you should be flattering me." "What? Next president? What are you talking about? What kind of nonsense are you spouting? My dad is the president of this company, right? So of course I'll be the next president." I wanted to say she was the one spouting nonsense, but I held back and explained that I couldn't come at lunch because I was dealing with a client in the morning that ran long. After that, I was immediately invited to lunch by the president of another company and went there, so I didn't have time to come here. Eloise glared at me with sharp eyes. "Wait a minute, what does that mean? You went out without telling me, and on top of that, you were treated to lunch by the president of another company? I can't believe you did that instead of me." I had been invited for a while, so it would have been rude to refuse. "Don't mess with me. Next time you do something on your own, I won't forgive you." Eloise threw a fit and began berating me, saying that even though I only gave her, the future president, convenience store food, I was living it up. "Even though you can't do your job properly, don't slack off." Eloise shouted that last bit and angrily kicked me out of the vice president's office. I was baffled by Eloise's sudden appearance and horrible attitude. She was hogging the vice president's office without doing any work. I wondered what she was thinking, and the words almost came out of my throat. But for Nate's sake, I couldn't treat her with disdain, so I had no choice but to swallow my anger. For the next few days, Eloise continued her tyrannical management of the company. She set unreasonable quotas for employees, increased unnecessary work to increase their overtime, and was just a total